There's no way I am going to suffer with you. This is not the comfort you promised me.
Mommy, please don't leave me. Stay with me, please, Mommy.
She abandoned her daughter years ago. Now life brought them face to face. Watch this emotional reunion and the power of forgiveness unfold. What would you do if the person who was supposed to love you most abandoned you in your darkest hour? This is the story of Amara. Stay with me till the end. The day everything broke began like any other, with the soft gray light of early morning creeping through the thin curtains of their small apartment and the smell of yesterday's rice still lingering in the air. Amara sat cross-legged on the floor, humming softly as she tried to fit mismatched puzzle pieces together, her fingers sticky with sugar from the cheap candy her father had bought her the night before. In the bedroom, her parents' voices drifted through the door low at first, then rising like a storm gathering strength. Her mother, Vivian, stood by the bed in her neat dress, lipstick perfectly applied as if she were already halfway out the door, while her father, Daniel, sat on the edge of the mattress, his shoulders slumped, eyes red from a night without sleep. Just hours earlier, he had come home carrying a single white envelope that changed their lives forever. He had lost his job. The factory had closed. 20 years of loyalty erased with one cold letter. Daniel kept trying to explain, his voice cracking as he spoke about severance pay, about looking for something new, about how they would get through this together. But Vivian wasn't listening. Her eyes were hard, fixed on a future she suddenly no longer wanted to share. "You promised me security," she said sharply. "You promised I wouldn't end up like my mother, begging and struggling." Daniel reached for her hand, desperate, but she pulled away like his touch burned. From the hallway, Amara could hear her own name being mentioned, and though she didn't understand the words, she felt the fear inside them. When Vivian finally stepped out of the bedroom, Amara looked up and smiled, expecting her usual warm greeting. Instead, she saw a stranger in her mother's face. Vivian didn't hug her. She didn't brush her hair or kiss her forehead. She simply picked up her handbag and adjusted the strap over her shoulder. "Mummy, are you going somewhere?" Amara asked, her small voice bright and hopeful. Daniel rushed out behind Vivian, his face pale. "Vivian, please, not like this. We can talk. We can figure it out. Don't do this to her," he pleaded, nodding toward their daughter. Vivian looked down at Amara for a long moment, her eyes flickering with something that might have been guilt, but it vanished quickly. "I didn't sign up for a life of poverty," she said coldly. "I refuse to raise a child in suffering." Amara stood up, confusion flooding her tiny face. "Mummy?" she whispered, stepping forward. Vivian took a step back. Daniel fell to his knees, wrapping his arms around Vivian's legs. "You can't just leave. She needs you. I need you." Vivian yanked herself free. "I need a life," she snapped. Then she turned and walked toward the door. Amara ran after her, grabbing onto her clothes. "Mummy, don't go. Please don't go," she cried, her little hands shaking. Vivian looked down at her, jaw tight, and gently but firmly removed Amara's fingers. "Let go," she said, her voice empty. And just like that, she walked out, leaving behind the sound of her daughter's screams echoing through the apartment. Daniel collapsed to the floor, pulling Amara into his arms as she cried until her body shook. He whispered promises he wasn't sure he could keep, telling her he would always be there, telling her everything would be okay, even as his own heart broke. Outside, Vivian didn't look back. She walked down the stairs and out into the street, the noise of the city swallowing her pain as she flagged down a taxi. Within days, she was gone for good. Months later, Daniel learned she had remarried a wealthy businessman in another city, a man who owned properties and traveled in expensive cars. Amara grew up with nothing but memories of a mother who left and a father who worked himself into exhaustion to make sure she never felt unloved. They moved to a smaller place. Daniel took whatever jobs he could find, cleaning offices at night, delivering packages by day, his hands always rough and tired, but always gentle when he held his daughter. Amara learned early that love did not always come with luxury. She watched her father sacrifice everything, skipping meals so she could eat, walking miles so she could go to school. And every night when she asked about her mother, Daniel swallowed his pain and said, "She made a choice, my angel, but I chose you." As the years passed, Vivian built a new life far away, convincing herself she had done the right thing. Her new husband spoiled her with jewelry and trips, and she had 2 more children who grew up surrounded by comfort. Yet somewhere deep inside, a quiet ache followed her. She never spoke about Amara. It was easier to pretend that part of her life had never existed. But life has a way of keeping score. When her wealthy husband fell ill and his business collapsed, the same people who once surrounded Vivian slowly disappeared. Her new children, grown and selfish, left her when the money was gone, just as she had once left her own child. By the time she was old and struggling, Vivian found herself alone, searching for any job that would let her survive. She applied to be a cleaner at a large company, never knowing that behind the doors of that tall glass building sat a powerful CEO named Amara, the daughter she had abandoned all those years ago. And while Vivian mopped floors with tired hands, fate was quietly preparing to bring mother and daughter face to face again, ready to uncover truth neither of them could escape. Vivian never imagined that the world she had once chased so desperately would one day spit her out so mercilessly. After marrying Richard, the wealthy businessman, she had lived in a house so large that even her footsteps sounded small. The floors were always shining, the curtains always drawn back to let in soft sunlight, and her closets were filled with dresses she had never dreamed of owning when she was young. For a while, she told herself she had won. She had escaped poverty. She had chosen a life of comfort. Her new children grew up without ever knowing hunger or fear, and she tried to pour all the love she had into them, hoping it would quiet the voice in her heart that sometimes whispered the name Amara when the house was too silent. But wealth has a way of creating fragile families. Her children became used to everything being handed to them. They learned to measure love by money, attention by gifts, and loyalty by convenience. Vivian saw it happening, but convinced herself it was better than struggling. Better than the shame she had once felt standing in that tiny apartment with Daniel, facing a future without security. When Richard fell ill, however, the walls of her perfect life began to crack. The doctor's bills piled up. The business deals slowed. The friends who once filled her home with laughter stopped coming. And when Richard finally passed away, the truth emerged like a cruel joke. Much of the wealth had been borrowed, leveraged, or already promised to others. Vivian was left with debts instead of comfort, and the mansion that once symbolized success became a prison of unpaid bills and empty rooms. It was then that her new children revealed just how shallow their love had become. Her son, barely out of college, demanded his share of what little was left, angry that his lifestyle was being threatened. Her daughter, who had grown up spoiled and admired, refused to stay in a house that now felt too small for her pride. They both blamed Vivian for not holding things together, for not keeping the money flowing, for failing to protect the life they were used to. One by one, they walked out of her life, just as she had once walked out of Amara's. Vivian begged them to stay. She cried, reminded them of everything she had done for them, but her words fell on ears that had never learned how to listen. Within months, she was alone in a nearly empty house, selling furniture just to buy food, watching her reflection grow thinner in mirrors that once showed her dressed in silk. The irony was cruel. The same woman who had once left her husband and child because she feared poverty was now drowning in it. And for the first time in her life, she had no one to blame but herself. By the time Vivian lost the house, she had lost almost everything else too. She moved into a small rented room, nothing like the home she once enjoyed. Her hands, which had been used to holding champagne glasses and luxury handbags, were now rough from scrubbing floors and washing dishes in small cafes. She swallowed her pride and applied for cleaning jobs wherever she could, knowing that hunger is louder than shame. Each morning she woke up before sunrise, pulling on worn clothes and tying her gray hair back, her reflection barely recognizable from the glamorous woman she used to be. She often thought about Daniel then, wondering how he had managed to survive after she left. And sometimes in the quiet of the night, she thought about Amara, imagining the little girl she had abandoned. Was she alive? Was she happy? Did she hate her? The questions haunted Vivian, but she never had the courage to look for answers. It was easier to focus on survival, on making it through another day without collapsing from exhaustion. That was how she ended up standing nervously in the lobby of Horizon Holdings, a massive glass building that towered above her, clutching her application for a cleaning position. Vivian didn't know it then, but Horizon Holdings was one of the most powerful companies in the city, and its CEO was a woman whose name commanded respect and fear in equal measure, Amara Daniels. The little girl she had once walked away from had grown into a brilliant, determined leader, shaped by hardship and love in equal measure. Amara had built her success with the same fire that had once burned in her eyes as she cried for her mother. She had worked her way through school with scholarships, studied business late into the night while her father slept from exhaustion, and eventually founded a company that now employed thousands. Yet despite her wealth, Amara carried scars that no one could see. The memory of being abandoned never truly left her. When Vivian was hired as a cleaner at Horizon Holdings, she was assigned to work on the executive floor, wiping desks and mopping floors that shone like mirrors. She passed by the CEO's office every day, never once suspecting that behind that door sat the daughter she had left behind. Fate had brought them together again, not as mother and child, but as two women on opposite sides of power and loss, both carrying wounds from the same broken past. Vivian's days at Horizon Holdings slowly fell into a quiet, exhausting rhythm, yet every morning she walked into the glass building with a strange weight in her chest she could not explain. The executive floor felt different from the others. It was colder, quieter, filled with the low hum of important conversations and the soft clicking of polished shoes against marble floors. She cleaned offices that smelled of expensive perfume and power, wiping desks that held contracts worth more money than she had seen in her entire life. And always, at the end of the long hallway, was the CEO's office, tall glass doors, golden lettering, and an aura that made even the highest executives hesitate before stepping inside. Vivian was instructed never to disturb the CEO, only to clean when she was out or when her assistant gave permission. But sometimes, while mopping near the door, Vivian would hear the calm, commanding voice of the woman inside, and something in her heart would twist painfully. It wasn't just that the voice sounded familiar. It was the way it carried both warmth and strength, like someone who had learned to be kind and unbreakable at the same time. Vivian would pause, her hands trembling slightly, wondering why her chest felt so tight. She would shake her head, telling herself she was being foolish. The past was the past. The daughter she abandoned was probably somewhere far away, living a life she would never know. There was no way she could be here. Amara, on the other side of the glass, noticed the cleaner long before Vivian realized she had been seen. From her desk, Amara often watched the elderly woman moving slowly through the halls, carefully polishing surfaces and straightening furniture with a kind of quiet dignity that didn't match her uniform. There was something about the way the woman carried herself, tired but proud, worn but gentle, that stirred something deep inside Amara. She reminded her of someone she had once loved, someone she had spent years trying to forget. Amara didn't know why she started paying attention, but she did. She noticed how the cleaner sometimes stopped outside her office, as if listening. She noticed the way her eyes softened when she saw family photos on other executives' desks. And she noticed, with a strange ache in her heart, that the woman's face looked hauntingly familiar. It was subtle at first, the curve of her cheek, the shape of her eyes, but the more Amara looked, the more she felt like she was staring at a ghost from her past. Still, she pushed the thought away. Her mother had chosen a different life. She had chosen money over love. Why would she be here now, scrubbing floors? The moment of recognition came on a rainy afternoon when Amara stayed late at the office. The building was quieter than usual, most employees already gone, leaving only the soft sound of rain against the windows and the occasional footsteps of cleaners finishing their rounds. Vivian was mopping the floor near Amara's office when the door suddenly opened. Startled, she looked up and their eyes met for the first time. The air between them seemed to freeze. Amara felt her breath catch as she stared into the face she had not seen in 15 years but had never stopped dreaming about. Vivian felt her knees weaken as she looked at the woman standing before her, tall, confident, beautiful, and saw the child she had abandoned hiding behind those strong eyes. Time seemed to collapse in on itself, past and present colliding in a single unbearable moment. Neither of them spoke. The silence was thick, heavy with memories and pain. Finally, Amara broke it, her voice steady but trembling beneath the surface. "What is your name?" she asked. Vivian swallowed hard, her throat dry. "Be Vivian," she whispered. The sound of her own name felt strange, as if it belonged to someone else. Amara nodded slowly, as if confirming something she had already known. "Do you have a daughter?" she asked quietly. The question struck Vivian like a knife. Tears filled her eyes, and she could no longer pretend. I did," she said. Her name was Amara. The room felt too small for the truth they were sharing. Vivian's strength finally gave way. She dropped the mop and sank to her knees, sobbing in a way she hadn't allowed herself to in years. "I'm so sorry," she cried, her voice breaking. "I was weak. I was afraid. I thought money would save me. I thought leaving was the only way." Amara stood frozen, her heart pounding. All the anger she had carried for so long, all the questions she had never been able to ask, rushed to the surface at once. "You left me," she said, her voice rising despite her efforts to stay calm. "You left my father when he needed you the most. You left me crying at the door while you walked away without looking back." Vivian lifted her tear-streaked face. "I know," she whispered. "I live with that every day. Losing you was the greatest mistake of my life." The truth of her suffering was written all over her face, but it didn't erase the pain she had caused. Amara turned away, struggling to breathe. This was not how she imagined meeting her mother again, not in her office, not with her wearing a cleaner's uniform. Fate had brought them together in the cruelest, most unexpected way, forcing both of them to face the wounds they had tried so hard to bury. Amara did not speak to Vivian again for 3 days after that moment in the office. 3 long, heavy days passed where the CEO of Horizon Holdings walked through her company like a woman carrying a storm inside her chest. She signed contracts, led meetings, and gave instructions with her usual sharp confidence, yet her mind was somewhere else entirely. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her mother kneeling on the floor, crying in a cleaner's uniform, the weight of regret bending her small, fragile body. Amara had waited so many years to feel powerful, to feel like she had risen above the pain of her childhood, but now that power felt meaningless. The little girl inside her, the one who used to sit by the door waiting for her mother to return, had suddenly come alive again. Vivian, meanwhile, worked through those same days in a fog of fear and shame. She avoided the executive floor, afraid that one wrong step would bring her face to face with the daughter she had once abandoned. But she could not escape the truth forever. On the 4th morning, Amara sent for her. When Vivian was told that the CEO wanted to see her, her legs almost gave way. She expected anger. She expected humiliation. What she did not expect was the quiet, heartbreaking honesty that awaited her. Amara's office was bathed in soft golden light when Vivian walked in, the city glowing behind the glass walls like a promise of new beginnings. Amara stood by the window, her back to the door. "Do you know what hurt the most?" she said softly, without turning around. "It wasn't just that you left. It was that you never came back. Not once. You didn't check if I was okay. You didn't care if I was alive." Vivian trembled as tears slid down her cheeks. "I was ashamed," she said. "I was scared that you would hate me." And I was right. Amara turned to face her, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Yes, I hated you. For years. I blamed you for every struggle my father and I went through. But hating you also made me strong. It pushed me to become someone who could never be abandoned again." She took a slow step closer to Vivian. "I built this company with the pain you left behind. Every late night, every sacrifice, every tear. It was all because I wanted to prove that I was worth staying for." Vivian broke down, unable to hold back her sobs. "You were always worth staying for," she cried. "I was just too blind to see it." Silence filled the room, thick and emotional. Then Amara did something that surprised even herself. She reached out and took Vivian's trembling hands. "I can't forget what you did," she said, "but I don't want to carry this anger anymore. It's too heavy." Vivian looked up at her, hope and disbelief battling in her tired eyes. "Does that mean?" she began. Amara nodded slowly. "It means I forgive you," she said. "Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace." Vivian collapsed into Amara's arms, crying like a child who had finally been found. Years of regret poured out of her in that embrace, and for the first time since she walked away from her family, her heart felt light again. From that day forward, Amara made sure Vivian was no longer just a cleaner. She gave her a small office, proper medical care, and the dignity she had been denied for so long. But more than that, she gave her something money could never buy, a second chance to be a mother. As time passed, their relationship slowly began to heal. They shared stories, painful and joyful, filling in the gaps of the years they had lost. Vivian learned about Daniel's sacrifices, about how he worked tirelessly to give Amara a future before he tragically died. And she wept for the man she had once abandoned. Amara learned about the hardships Vivian had faced after choosing wealth over love, and she understood that her mother had been punished by life in ways no one could have imagined. Their bond was not perfect, but it was real. And sometimes that is enough. In the end, the story of Vivian and Amara became one of the most powerful lessons Horizon Holdings ever carried. A reminder that forgiveness is stronger than bitterness, and love is stronger than regret. What would you do if the person who was supposed to love you most abandoned you in your darkest hour? If this story touched your heart, stay with us for more emotional journeys like this. And don't forget to subscribe to Afritales by SophyJay, where broken hearts find healing and lost families find their way back home.